Hey Veer, I actually have something sort of like a parking lot related issue. I don't want to kind of derail the topic of Bento today. How do you want to handle that? Do you want to kind of go through the normal meeting and then in the end talk about it?
Yeah, either way, we can go ahead now if you want. Do you think you need a lot of time for it, or just kind of a quickie?
Well, I don't know. Why don't we just go ahead and let's try. So
Okay, fire away.
this is mainly for folks who have well, actually, I take that back. Let me reset. There was an issue. This is about that the LOD generator. You may have heard about Veer. We're starting to look into it now. It has to do when you're uploading a mesh or DAE file. The outcome varies. My
Yeah, if you
understanding is that
generate your LODs automatically, you don't always get the same results.
right. Has anybody here, just curious, encountered that? Is that something that you guys are finding a really big issue? I'm not sure if it was well. The JIRA that I'm looking at was filed a long time ago. Let's see.
I think it's an internal Jira, the SH project, right?
Yeah, it looks like it. Yes, Tigger, it is a pre-bento thing.
Yeah,
So
this
there's
was
some
when we were
other
first doing
issues.
Mesh, which was around 2010, something like that. So is the consensus that people usually create their own LODs anyway, just to improve the quality?
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, so we did do a little bit of investigating and found that there is some subset of people that run into this issue, and as a result of this, I think we kind of ding them somehow, some way. I just wanted to get an idea from the Bento standpoint whether or not this group is affected, because trying to understand how we prioritize. I think it sounds like we are going to try to fix it. It's just a matter of how do we prioritize it. So if it were something that this group ran into a bunch, we're assuming that when we roll Bento out, other new users or users of Bento will encounter the same problem. We don't want that to happen. So okay, well that's good to know.
All right, Troy. Anything else, or should we get started with the rest of the discussion?
I think we're good. Yeah, thank you.
All right. See a few new models this week. That's an awesome Velociraptor Deinonychus or something like that. Tornleaf, is that also a new beastie that you're wearing? Okay, well, some of you probably noticed you got a project viewer update, or you should have. We pushed out the latest changes earlier today. So that's going to include a few fixes that we've talked about in weeks past. Let's see. There's the fix for the collision volume rendering. Should be working now. At least the models that I've tested, it seems to be working okay. Tiger, I'm seeing your model just fine for whatever that's worth. And so that's one thing. We talked about the SLM files, which sounded like they were, somewhere between useless and harmful for most people, but there were a few corner cases where people were still interested in them. So the behavior in the latest viewer should be that the default setting is to disable those. They don't get created and they don't get used. But if someone really wants to change the setting in the debug settings, they can do that, and then they'll have their old behavior. Let's see what else. We've done a little bit of digging into the distortion issues. As you know, if you're doing software skinning and your avatar's at high altitudes, you can get some strange glitches. If you right-click on an avatar, the mesh that gets generated there can also be distorted. We don't know what's causing that yet. I had one pet theory that I did some digging on recently, and it didn't pan out. So I don't know for sure that that's going to get fixed before Bento goes to RC, but we'll do a little more investigation on it. Let's see what else. Oh, and there's one update regarding the body size updates. As you may recall from previous weeks, we talked about the problem of some avatars kind of bobbing up and down, and that, it turns out, is related to the way that we calculate the body size of the avatar. That's based on the state of a subset of the bones. And if you do that, so if you're doing something that touches those bones a lot, either the position or the scale, and then the body size gets updated too often, then you can get kind of seasickness inducing artifacts where the camera keeps bobbing up and down, and the whole thing is kind of disturbing. I think the optimal fix there is really to avoid animations that change the position of those bones. It's fine, you can rotate them. It's not that they can't move, but if the position is getting animated, then you can get these strange artifacts. But we did make one change to try to make that problem a bit less conspicuous. Instead of doing the body size update every frame, the latest viewer only does it when you're starting and stopping an animation. So rather than getting sort of continuously tossed and pitched up and down, you'll just see adjustments happening every so often when animations get started up or shut down. So hopefully that'll give a little more predictable experience, even if you're using content that does change the joint positions on those things. Yeah, I'll probably say regarding the distortion issue, it does happen with all meshes when you right-click. The one that seems to be somewhat less common is the distortion in the base mesh itself, which seems to get worse with altitude, and that's only when you're doing software skinning. If the calculations are happening in the GPU, the avatar looks okay. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's some kind of a floating point precision issue that's getting introduced somewhere, but we don't know exactly where yet. Yeah, Aki, I think if you're still using an animation that's touching those joints, you're going to see a jump, when an animation starts or stops. So that's, hopefully a little less disturbing than what it was doing before, but I'm sure it's not optimal. I don't think it should. I don't think it should happen just at the end of a loop. I mean, if an animation is looping, I think it should just continue to do its thing. But if an animation actually starts or stops, then that's the cue that the viewer uses to decide to do an update. Yeah, I've been promising you guys docs for a while, and I don't have them yet. The avatar height is calculated using, let's see if I remember, the left foot, the left ankle, the left knee, the left hip, the pelvis, torso, chest, neck, head, and skull, I think. So if you're animating the position or the scale of any of those, then the body size calculation will decide that things have changed. As you can't animate scales, the most likely way that this would happen is if there's an animation that's affecting positions. Of course, if you're fiddling with sliders or wearing a different mesh that has different joint positions defined or whatever, then that can also affect it. But those aren't things that tend to be going on all the time. So if you're seeing changes that are happening frequently, then I think it's likely to be animation related. So let's see. We've had a lot of discussions of some artifacts on export, and a lot of them have had an element, I think, of some Avastar issues. We've talked about those a bit in weeks past too, and I think Matrice has been making a lot of headway on that. Matrice, do you want to say anything about where things are with Avastar now?
Yeah, hello. Um, I have been working on Avastar for quite a long while now to understand what really is going on with all those small deviations and distortions that have been seen in the past. And I believe that I have fixed almost all of the problems by now, except for the torso bone. There's something wrong which I detected just 2 hours ago. This might be only related to the Coyote file from Medhu. He has modified this area in a way which was unexpected to our algorithm. Let's say it like that. Otherwise, I at least until yesterday, I was able to create a model in Blender, use the sliders, and get exactly the same results which I see in Blender, also in ADT. This also includes joint position editing, and so I think the basic problems are all solved. But there are still a few small issues. I don't know how long it will take. Probably another couple of days to get it really done.
So, yeah, I know we're all looking forward to seeing the fixes there. I should talk a little bit about the likely release state of Bento. At this point, I don't think we have any active bugs that are, or at least known active bugs that are considered to be must fix for getting the Bento viewer out to RFC. So I think it's likely that's going to be happening soon. So I would definitely encourage anyone who's interested in this stuff to do any additional testing that you want to do in the next in the coming week or two, so that we can try to find out if there are any other things that we haven't been catching before. But obviously the next step is we want to get this out to RC. I think that'll get the viewer tested by a wider range of people, not just content creators, but also just people who are using the product for other activities, which will give us a better idea about stability or other possible issues. And of course, it's kind of the last stop before we go to release as well. So obviously once things are out to release, it's unlikely we'd make any further avatar changes anytime soon, and there's a lot of changes we couldn't make at all since it would break existing content. So please look at this stuff if you can. I know the testing process has been kind of frustrating recently, and I'm sorry that's the case, but still we've as far as we know, there's not changes to the skeleton or the sliders in the works at this point, and we'd like to get it out there for as wide a testing as possible.
Hey, Veer, I want to just add something to that, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So, so what, as Veer was saying, this is actually one of the first times we've actually engaged, at least lately, and I know as far as myself being a Linden, engaging with the community in this fashion so that we can, get a lot of the input that'll help define and shape the feature. We like the outcome a lot. We love the fact that we've got user group meetings and having an outcome like this weekly, and you guys spending the time to come and discuss and test some of the things really is appreciated on our end. So we want to continue to do this. That said, it is one of the first times that we've done this. It's relatively new in the way we kind of develop things. So these are sort of the pain points that I think we would expect some of the, at the first times going through this. So, I want to say personally, again, thank you guys for all of your contributions and help. And hopefully the second time around, or the next project that we do, and we engage with the community, it doesn't, we'll learn from some of the gotchas and pain points, and we'll hopefully make it a lot smoother next time around. So.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Seconded on that. It's as we've mentioned before. It's been a huge help to have so many people interested in the project and giving us their feedback, either on problems with what's currently out there or suggestions for additional things we might want to look into. I think people who have been with the project from the start know that we've grown it quite a bit over time based on user feedback. It's really quite a bit more extensive than what we originally planned to do, and I think it's also going to be, as a result, much more functional. You can do so much more than we'd originally anticipated, including all the support for the extensive support for sliders and a much wider selection of bones that are kind of customized based on what people were most interested in seeing.
Yeah, I was really surprised that when we first talked about this, we thought we were going to get a lot of people that had very biased opinions on what things we should be focusing on and where should we spend the budget of the new bones, etc. But I think we all learned to play nicely together, so that's a huge plus.
Yeah, so we're really excited to take this thing to the next stage and get it in front of more people, get it to release, and have it be something that everyone can experience in world. I know a lot of people who create meshes and sell them in the marketplace and so on are also going to be very interested to get this thing moving along. So that's what we're hoping to do as soon as we can. Yeah, Mesh was kind of an interesting case because it wasn't really even planned to support avatars originally. It was, really it was primarily about supporting kind of static meshes, and then, some of the folks working on it found ways to support skinning fairly easily, and then things kind of snowballed from there. But, then as soon as you support skinning and avatars, you get all these questions about, well, does it do all these other things that the old avatars do? And of course it doesn't do a lot of the same things the old avatars did. We're fixing, I think, some of that with Bento, but it's still there's still a fundamental split between the way the two different technologies work, and it's been kind of a process of evolution as we found out what people are most interested in and what they really want to do with the models. Okay, well that's really all I had on the agenda for this week. Hopefully some of the outstanding issues are looking better with this project viewer, but I know we'll be keeping an eye on the Avastar side of things. And does anybody else have questions, comments, new bugs, or anything else they want to talk about?
Oh, I wanted to update Maya users on a few things that I figured out over the last week or so. Okay if I do it now?
Oh, yep, you have the floor.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, as you can tell, I'm wearing Medu's coyote. I was helping him after the meeting on Thursday. We were trying to figure out some of the bugs that we were seeing with his mesh. And through helping him, I discovered a few other things along the way. So for Maya users, When you're making a custom skeleton and putting the joints in custom places, you have to freeze transformation of all the bones. You have to do freeze transformation, and that can usually only be done when there's nothing rigged to the mesh or to the skeleton. No mesh is rigged to it. And one setting that I discovered that turned out to be quite critical is by default, freeze transformation basically zeroes out translations, scales, set scales to 1, 1, and 1, and rotations to 0. But there's another thing that it can also zero out, which by default Maya doesn't have set, which is joint orientation. And when you're rigging a mesh for a new skeleton or for a skeleton in custom positions, the joint orientation is very weird. It has to be basically world orientation, where the joint orientation is straight up for Z, up and down, straight forward and back for X, and Y has to be straight left and right. Well, we have, and that's fine for almost all the bones, unless you're using custom bone positions in different places. For a human avatar, it's been fine because everything was on those X, Y, and Z straight up and down. But since we've added fingers, the index finger and the ring finger and the pinky finger and the thumb are not, they're kind of on an angle. And so if you're rigging to those bones, when you rig to them, you want the joints to be, the joint orientation to be basically world orientation, where, like I said, Z is straight up and down, X is straight forward and back, and Y is right and left. But what happens when you do that, if you try to rotate those bones just by rotating them, they bend at a weird angle. And so for animation, you don't want to, you need to have like the joints pointing towards the child joint so that it bends normally. So if you're doing rigging to a custom skeleton in Maya, you definitely want to freeze transformation of all the bones, but make sure that you have joint orientation also selected in those options. I think you only have to freeze transformation on the translation and the orientation. I'm not 100% sure on the rotation. Scales you do not have to freeze transformation on. And there was something else. What is it? There was something else that was really important, and I'm having a brain fart that we discovered. Oh yeah, now I remember. Okay, so this gets back to the, so that's the Maya users. And this is also, the next thing I'm going to say is also important for Maya users, but Blender users will find this important because it affected them, and Matrice has been working on Avastar so that it automatically does this. But for Maya users, if you're rigging to the face and you've moved, say, the face root to a custom bone position, but you're not rigging to the face root, so there's no weight on the face root. For Maya users, you have to have that face root in the skin cluster. Otherwise, when you export out your DAE file, that bone will not be in the DAE file, so it won't know that that's the custom joint position. And that's what was happening with Medu's coyote, is when you would click on him to reset the skeleton, his head was collapsing into his chest. And that's because he was using a animation with translations which would move the face root into the correct position, but that when you right mouse clicked on him and clicked reset skeleton, that face root would be reset to the default position because it was not, it didn't contain, the mesh didn't contain, the DAE didn't contain the information for the M face root custom joint position. So that's why he was having that, and that's why we figured out that's probably also what was causing problems with the lips that people were seeing. Was that when we reparented the lips to the teeth bones, if there's no weight on the teeth bones and you didn't export out the, if the teeth weren't contained in the DAE, the teeth bone position, that would cause the teeth to be, the lips to become distorted because the teeth bones positions weren't in the DAE file. So anyway, so my users, when you're rigging stuff, you got to be very careful if you're using custom bone positions that you include all the bones in the skin cluster so they export out in the DAE. So even if like say the teeth don't have any weight on them, if the teeth have a custom bone position, you got to make sure that those teeth are in the skin cluster. Otherwise, that custom bone position will not be contained in the DAE, and then when you upload it, that custom bone position won't be in the DAE for the bone to know where it's supposed to go. And in Maya, there's a thing called a feature called Remove Unused Influences, which takes a rigged mesh and it will remove all the bones that don't have any weights on it. So be careful when you use that, because it may remove key bones, key parent bones that have custom bone positions that affect the child bones. So anyway, so that's basically what we discovered last week. And so my users just have to be careful of that. I know Matrice is making sure Avastar does this all automatically, so that no bones are left out. So I think that's about it. I'll go through to see if I missed any questions that were done in world chat.
Yeah, that's a really good find about the intermediate bones not getting included in the export. I think that probably does account for a lot of the, certainly not all, but a lot of the issues that we've seen recently with the face getting distorted. So, hopefully we can have those things being detected a little more automatically, but in the meantime, it's good to at least know what the process is. Kathy, are there any docs or tutorials you know of that include kind of tips on how to do this stuff?
Well, I do plan on making some videos eventually, saying here's the tips, here's the important things that you have to make sure that you include in your skin cluster. I don't know what the equivalent to the skin cluster is in Blender. The skin cluster in Maya is an information node that contains all the weighting information for all the vertices, but it also contains all the bone information, how many bones is the mesh, all the names of the bones of the mesh that's rigged to, and also their positions. So I don't know what the equivalent in Blender is. I know Madhu, I'm sorry Madhu isn't here. Once we figured that out, Madhu was able to add, he added the M face root to it, and that fixed a lot of the problems that he was having. He was able to add that bone to the mesh so that when it exported out the position. But yeah, I do plan on doing some videos how to make a custom skeleton bone positions in Maya for Maya users. I plan on doing a video for that, and a video for probably talking about animations. Like I said, the joint orientation can be different, has to be different for rigging than for animating the fingers, so that the fingers bend properly when you animate them. It's a really weird thing. Remember, Veer, when we were in Bento a long time ago when it was a closed group, we had these tentacles. Veer made 10 tentacles, and then I made 10 tentacles in Maya to make sure everything was working. And the tentacles were getting distorted. I started with tentacles facing straight forward, or a tentacle facing straight forward, and of course it had world axes, like I talked about, straight up and down, straight left and right, straight forward and back. And then I duplicated that tentacle and I rotated it 45 degrees, and then attached it to the skeleton, and then made these tentacles and rigged it to them. But what was happening was when we were wearing them in world, the mesh was getting distorted. The tentacles facing straight forward and back, or the tentacle coming straight out the front of the avatar, looked fine. The tentacle at 45 degrees was kind of skinny. It was getting kind of skinny, and the one straight out to the left and right got really skinny. And then it started to reverse, where the faces started to reverse, to where the tentacle that went straight back. It was as if the faces were reversed. And we figured out that it was because these joint orientations have to be to world orientation. But when you duplicate, when I duplicated the tentacle and rotated it 45 degrees, those joint orientations were no longer straight forward and back, up and down, right and left. They were on a 45-degree angle, and that actually caused the rig mesh to behave differently once worn. And so that was one of the things we figured out a long time ago. But in order to animate the tentacles properly, you do need them pointing down the chain, in order to animate them so that they rotate properly. So that's a kind of an interesting thing, and I'll do a video explaining this eventually. It may take me a while, but I will get to a video explaining this eventually.
I know you have a few things to keep you entertained these days. You're still working on doing a MayaStar update with all of this latest coolness as well, right?
Yeah, I'm still working on that. Trying to get all the sliders to work with MayaStar with all the new bones, and it's a long process. I got a lot on my plate.
So how does that work? Do you have to basically re-implement the sliders in kind of Maya speak, or are you able to sort of use the existing
Right.
code that's in the XML file to help with that?
Right. Well, this is like one of the differences between Avastar and MayaStar. I'm not nearly as good a coder as, and program writer as Matrice. So when I made MayaStar, how I created the sliders is I did it all with set-driven keys. I created a locator, and I put the locator on the y-axis where the default position would be. So for a lot of things, that's for where the slider position would be 50, would be the default, or the no influence point, where it's the neutral point. And then I would move the locator to 100 units to the right, and that would be the equivalent of 100 units in the slider. And then I would do the same thing to the left, and I would create set-driven keys for all the bones. So I had to calculate out manually their positions and rotations depending on, not rotations, offsets and XYZ positions, and rotations. Some of them have rotations in them. And so I'd create these set-driven keys. So I'd have to calculate all that out. Luckily, Maya is very similar to the way Second Life works and the way the Avatar LAD is set up. So I have to calculate each position of each bone and keyframe that, basically, or set key it. And so, so we've added a bunch of new bones. So I get to do that for each bone for each slider, or each slider for all the bones that slider affects. So it's a long process. Matrice is, if I was half the coder he was, Avastar actually reads the Avatar LAD and sets up the sliders automatically, manually, or not automatically, not manually. It does it all automatically. And so, but with MayaStar, I have to set it all up manually, and so that just takes a really long time.
Yeah, I was wondering about the potential to try to kind of automate that. I don't know Mel, but I do know that obviously the Avatar LAD itself is fairly unambiguously, although complexly structured XML file, and so in principle you could have something that would sort of crawl through that list of things and turn it into a description in some other language, like Mel. If if there's anyone who was sort of comfortable on the scripting side with Mel, I'd be happy to talk with them about what would be involved in trying to kind of pull that information out from the LAD file.
Yeah, well, maybe you and I can talk later.
Yeah, no, I know trying to do all that by hand would be a lot of no fun, but I can't speak to how much faster it would be to try some other approach. We can chat about it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I just my coding skills never have gotten quite up to where I've learned how to have a Mel read an XML file. I know it's possible. I've looked into it. It's just that I've never gotten around to it, to really spending, the month or two that it would take me to probably learn how to do that.
Yeah, well, I guess what I was thinking is, and this may or may not make sense since I don't know much about Mel, but if it would just be possible to have a separate script or application that would read the XML file, it's like a Python script or something that would read the XML file and generate, some corresponding Mel script, so that you wouldn't necessarily need to be parsing the XML inside of Maya itself, if you did it that way. But I don't know. I don't know what the simplest approach would be.
Correct. I understand. Yeah, originally I had to go through the LAD script and then calculate out the maximum and minimum positions of each bone for each slider, and the neutral position. Well, the neutral position was the default position of the avatar, and that was a lot of hand calculations, thousands of hand calculations. And I later found out that I didn't need to calculate all those. I could have just taken the min and max settings in the avatar LAD and multiply each one of those by whichever bone or offset for either offset or rotation, and get that one value, and then plug in that one value into the text, not the text editor, the graph editor, for the set keys, and that would have automatically calculated their end positions and maximum positions and minor positions. So had I known that, I could have cut my work down by 2/3.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, of course, anytime you have to do a lot of repetitive calculations, you figure a computer can probably do it faster, but it's just a question of figuring out exactly how.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, I think a bunch of people have run into kind of similar issues. I know Aki, I think, was trying to generate a kind of a spreadsheet with information about the various sliders, and again, it would be fairly straightforward to to crunch through the XML file and generate the information in some other form if that's useful for people. It's just a question of understanding exactly what's needed. Anyway, I don't know all of the sort of destinations here. What the spreadsheet's supposed to look like or what Mel looks like. I do have a little bit of experience with doing the parsing and processing on the Avatar LAD side. So feel free to drop me a line if you want to chat about any of these projects, and we might be able to find ways to to speed them up a bit.
I have a quick question or a request. Okay, I found this out with working with Madhu afterwards, after the meeting, and I was see what Madhu did is he gave me his DAE file and an FBX file generated from Blender, and I brought it into Maya, and because we were making sure that it wasn't just a Blender, or we were making sure that the problems were really in Blender and weren't something that was wrong with the viewer or with Bento. And so I finally got everything to work correctly in Maya. and uploaded just fine and everything, but I noticed the neck was off. And I realized that the default slider for the neck, because the M neck bone is one of the few bones that actually changes scales like the collision volumes do. The avatar's neck does not change size from a morph. It actually changes size from the M neck bone.
Changes
Changing
scale when in the sliders.
in the avatar in the avatar lad in the sliders. Yeah, it's actually
Okay.
so the M neck bone actually acts like a collision volume bone and changes scales when you move the sliders. And then I realized that the neutral position for the slider for the neck bone is actually like 66.6667 is what the slider value would have to be for it to actually be in a neutral position. So that the neck bone has a scale of just 1, 1, and 1. And so my question would be is, like 66 is not the setting for when you create a new avatar shape in your inventory, often referred to as Ruth. If Linden Lab could create a shape that everybody has in their inventory that is a truly neutral shape, where all the joints and all the scales are set at 1, 1, and 1, and the joint positions were at their absolute default positions, that might go a long way in helping avatar makers be able to make mesh that looks identical to what they see in Blender or in Maya. Because it was throwing me off because I was looking at my neck of the wolf and going, what's wrong with that? Why is it so far off? I'm wearing the default shape, that you create when you create a new shape in your inventory. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, the neck slider is off. And I moved the neck slider to, I think it was 67 or 66, and all of a sudden it was perfect, or as far as near perfect as it could be.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think Matrice maybe had mentioned something along those lines too, that it would be useful to be able to set a shape into the neutral position. You couldn't make it perfect because when the information, when basically the params get sent out to other people with these appearance messages, they're sent as 8-bit values. They're not actually sent as the floats. So the best you could do would be to send out the 0 to 255 value that would give the closest approximation to whatever floating point value was neutral. But I think you could at least get pretty close on that, and I don't think that would be a huge project. I'll make a note. We've got a kind of a running list of possible follow-up projects for Bento. Some are quite large, others are pretty small. This one would certainly be on the smaller side, and I will add that to that list to make sure that we consider it when it's time to kind of think about next things.
I have one point to say about this too. When you create a new default shape in Second Life, then the shape values are actually used like they are defined in the skeleton and in avatar skeleton.xml, and those values are not directly mappable to integer values. So when you take the neck thickness slider, for example, you move it away from the default position that you got from your new default shape. And then you move it back to the same value as it was before. Then you see a very slight deviation from when you created the default shape. So as long as you do not open the shape editor, the default shape actually uses floating point numbers from the viewer. So the basic idea is when you want to have the same for the true neutral shape, then you would need to add a second shape into the viewer directly. This would make it possible to have either the default shape or the neutral shape, and both using floating point numbers until the moment when you open the editor and start modifying the sliders. And as soon as you change the slider value, it will snap into an integer value, into the corresponding value to the integer value. It's again a mapping from float to integer, but you can't get the true rest pose shape only with slider values.
Yeah, there's actually, I guess, two integer ranges. There's the 0 to 100 or whatever that is the value you got on the slider, and then there's 0 to 255, which is the value that is actually going to be sent out in appearance messages, and then there's the underlying float value. Unfortunately, not all of the conversions there are done completely flawlessly either, so it's it would all be a little approximate, but it would certainly be possible to get at least the nearest feasible thing to a true neutral. And I think that the wearables themselves, like the shape, do actually store their values as floating points. So I believe you could in principle have a wearable that had perfectly neutral values, but it would still be subject to some conversions in transit when you're actually seeing how it looks on people.
When you look at Avastar, then you don't have this sort of problems, or you should not have this sort of problems, because whatever you see in Avastar should be exactly the same as what you see in the Second Life viewer. This also includes this this behavior which I explained just before. So when you create a new default shape in Avastar, it uses the floating point numbers as long as you do not edit the slider values. As soon as you use the slider values, you get the integer value, and the shape modifies slightly. So when you are creating models with Avastar, then you should be always you always should see the models in the same in exactly the same geometry as it will later be shown when you wear it in Second Life with the same shape. And on top of this, also since a couple of days, then the neutral shape, which we also supported for a long time, but not precisely. This is now precise to I think 6 orders of magnitude. So you now have a true neutral shape in Avastar 2, which should make many problems go away when it's about mesh development kits, importing and all this stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good thing to have.
Yeah, at least you now you can really import any rig from any source, and it will be precise. Which is this is actually the goal which we wanted to reach for a long time, almost for 6 months to get there, and I believe that we have it now.
I guess if you're not using Avastar or some other plugin that knows about sliders, then yeah, effectively you're working with the assumption that you have a neutral shape in those packages.
Oh, I believe that the avatar.blend, which was a blend file that contained a working shape for all the version for the time before Bento. This rig was precise, exactly the neutral shape, the neutral rig, and it was generated from the LAD file. From the avatar skeleton, and it was using the pivot values. I think I'm not exactly sure, but I think it was using the pivots. Oh, I have one more thing about the issue that was mentioned by Casey earlier. Since yesterday or before yesterday, I think Vir has told me about this problem with when the rig does not contain a bone which has joint positions but is not weighted. I added this to Avastar so that it now automatically finds out which bones need to be exported. And the coyote which I'm wearing right now is exported with this new algorithm, so I think it works.
Okay, well, it sounds like we've got a lot of nice stuff coming along. I guess we're about out of time for this week. Any other questions from anybody or comments? Anybody been doing any modeling lately? Tornleaf, is your thing a Bento model? Yeah, that's cool. I don't think I'd seen that one before. Tigger, my understanding is that there were other issues with the computation of the joint offsets as well. It wasn't just a matter of missing bones, but it does seem like that may have accounted for some of the problems people were seeing. I guess especially like the collapsing of the lips because the teeth were missing, or the collapsing of the face because the face root was missing. All right, well, why don't we wrap it for this week, and should see everybody next week. So yeah, let me know about any bugs. Looking forward to trying out the next generation Avastar with all the cool fixes coming up, and we'll talk to you soon. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Now for Bento After Hours. I wanted to ask you, Matrice, like scan clusters in Maya, what is the equivalent in Blender? What is it called when you add a bone to something that's already been rigged?
We don't have skin clusters as far as I know. We only have weight maps. One weight map for each bone, and all weight maps are managed in one large list.
Okay. So it's a weight bone map, and you can add a bone to that weight bone map, even if something's already been rigged.
Yes, you can create. Actually, this is the weight maps are entities which are used for several different purposes. You can create weight maps, and as soon as you name a weight map as soon as you choose to name the weight map exactly like a bone, then Blender understands this weight map is supposed to be for that bone.
Okay, yeah, because Mandu was able to add the face root, I think, without having to re-rig the whole thing. So I figured there was a way you could do it. So
yes. You only need to add a new weight group with a name it mface root, Then you can export, and all is good. But I have changed this now so that you not even need to do this any longer. So the exporter now knows that it has to export mphase root, although it has not been, even if there is no wait for it. So you don't have to mess around with the model or with the rig or anything. It's all done during the export.
Right. Yeah. So you've had it done all automatically, which is awesome. For Maya users, Maya Star does not do it automatically. So for those Maya users out there, when you're like I said, when you're doing custom bone positions, if you move a bone, even if you're not rigging to it, you got to make sure that bone is in the skin cluster.
I'd like to answer to Polysale. We have decided a long time ago that we wanted to create our own Collada exporter because we wanted to keep the rig in the orientation of Blender, so arms pointing along the x-axis, while the export to Second Life needs the arms pointing along the y-axis. And Blender was not able to export to do this this change during the export. We had to rotate the model just before exporting and then export the model. And another point was Blender does not have bind pose matrix, which means the only valid bind pose is the T pose for whichever character you want. We wanted to get some more flexibility there, so we had to add something to the Avastar exporter. We had to add an exporter which was able to also create something similar to bind pose, which has never been really finished up to the end, but at least it made things going easier for us. So we did not need to do manual modifications to the model before exporting with the Blender exporter. Yeah, for exporting animations, we also have got our own exporter exactly for the same reasons as you just mentioned.